Hi everyone, it's Laura here for ModaScrap, and in today's video I'm going to share with you how to create a Happy New Year's card with the Unconventional Xmas stamp set. For my project today I combined several products in the ModaScrap range. I used the Unconventional Xmas stamps and dies, and I paired them with another stamp set which is part of the latest release by ModaScrap, which allows you to build some really gorgeous snowflakes. I used the banner dies to create a banner for my sentiment, and then I used the big snowflake die to create a focal point on my card. For my greeting I used the funny alphabet die, and this is a great die to create custom greetings on your projects. And then I used papers from the Icy Winter Season paper pad. I used the 6x6 version, but a 12x12 version is also available. As a first step, I die cut some white cardstock using the big snowflake die by ModaScrap, and I set this aside while I started working on the rest of the elements for my card. I chose the adorable bear from the Unconventional Xmas stamp set, and I stamped it with black alcohol-proof ink on some white cardstock. For the coloring today, I used my Illustrator markers and I did some very quick coloring. I kept the bear white, so I'm only adding some shading using some cool grays. And I chose cool grays rather than warm grays because I felt they matched more closely the color palette of the paper pad that I'll be using today. I started by adding my shadows with an IG4 marker, and then I blended them out a little bit with my IG2 marker, still leaving most of the image white because I want the image to be nice and bright. Once I was done adding the second layer of color and blending out my markers together, I used my colorless blender to blend everything so that I get a nice and smooth fade into white. The coloring was very quick to do. As you can see, it's very limited because we are leaving this bear white. You could use some browns if you wanted, but as I said, I felt that cool grays were the best match for the color palette in the paper pack that I'll be using. I added a blush to his cheek with my FS4 marker, and then I colored his nose with some darker shades of my IG markers. And when I was done coloring, I die cut the image with the Unconventional Xmas coordinating dies, and here it is. Next, I die cut some white cardstock with the Dashing Rectangles dies. This is the third largest die in the set. I am using the large snowflake die cut to kind of decide on the arrangement of the snowflakes that I'm going to create thanks to this second stamp set that I'll be using today. Once I have found a positioning that I like, I can go ahead and ink up my stamps with Versamark ink because I'm going to be doing some heat embossing with clear embossing powder. Right now you cannot see much because of the fact that the embossing powder is clear, but later on we'll be adding some inks to this panel and the snowflakes will show up. I coated the stamped images with clear embossing powder, I tapped off the excess, and then I heat set the powder with my heat gun before moving on and adding a few more snowflakes to my design. The largest stamp in the set is one of the Snowflake Builder stamps, so you can see the center is empty at the moment, and I will be filling it in the next step. But for now I am coating my stamped images with that same clear embossing powder and heat setting it with my heat gun. The final step is to add the central part of that large snowflake using another stamp in the set. I am again inking it up with Versamark ink, coating it with embossing powder and heat setting the embossing powder with my heat gun. And once this step is done, I can go ahead and start actually doing my ink blending on this panel. I decided to use some distress oxides and I picked shades of blue which again matched as closely as possible the color palette on the paper pad that I'm using today. I used tumbled glass, stormy sky and faded jeans, and I'm blending them from lightest to darkest, starting from the bottom right corner of my panel and moving my way in a sort of a circular pattern towards the opposite corner of the panel. Wherever there is a transition between two colors, I'm going back and forth between these two inks so that I get a smooth gradient. And then to add a little bit of extra shine to this panel, I picked a mini mister which is filled with a solution of water and perfect pearls, and I generously misted the whole panel with this solution. And here you can see the nice pearlescent effect that you obtain with this technique once the panel is dry. The next step was to create the background panel for my card, so I chose one of the designs from the Icy Winter Season paper pad by ModaScrap, and I trimmed it down to 4¼ by 5½ inches. And then I die cut the sentiment Happy 2020 using the funny alphabet die, and I die cut it out of some white cardstock. I started assembling my card and I adhered the ink blended panel onto my card base using some double-sided adhesive. I'm centering the two panels with respect to each other, and then I'm going to use this big snowflake die cut to create a focal panel for my bear on the bottom right portion of my card front. I'm going to later trim off the excess, but first I used the banner die to die cut one more of the designs from the Icy Winter paper pad so that I could create a little flag banner for my sentiment. I also decided to ink blend my Distress Oxides in Stormy Sky and Faded Jeans on the 2020 part of the sentiment, trying to create a gradient effect on these letters and add a little bit more interest to the card. And then I could go ahead and adhere the banner and the letters to my card front. I glued down the banner, tucking it slightly under the bear, and then I went ahead and adhered all my die cut letters and numbers. I started from the 2020 part of the sentiment, which I'm going to glue onto the banner. I'm using some Nuvo Deluxe adhesive because it has a very fine tip applicator which works great with smaller die cuts like these ones, and I'm also using my reverse tweezers to pick up and help me position every single die cut. For the happy part of the greeting, I left the letters white and I'm going to use the same technique with the Nuvo Deluxe adhesive and my reverse tweezers to adhere them just right above the sentiment banner. And then after this step was done, I decided to add a few more detail to the sentiment to make it stand out a little bit more against the background, which is rather busy for this card. So I decided to coat every single letter and number with my Spectrum Noir clear overlay pen, which will add some nice and subtle shimmer. And then I coated everything with my glossy accents, which will give again a shiny touch to the letters and will also add a little bit of dimension. I added a small highlight to the bear's nose and that finished off my card. And that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video and I hope I inspired you to create your own Happy New Year's card with the ModaScrap Unconventional Xmas stamp set. Don't forget to subscribe for more card making and paper crafting inspiration. Thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.